Alright, Victorum Gaming fans and Hail Caesar fans, we're back with another faction review video today, and I hope you like horses. We are covering the Scythians. So, as it says, about 7th through 1st centuries BC, so a lot of good potential there to have them square off against different armies, and again, if you like cavalry, this is a cool list for you, and one that, again, doesn't always get that much attention, whether it's model-wise or just, sheer number of people that you see playing a Scythian list or anything like that. So, as opposed to some of the more typical things like, obviously later in history, like Mongols or Huns or something like that. Here you get a chance to have like a BC cavalry-focused list here. So the Scythians, let's jump right in. As you can see here, this is definitely a departure from basically everything we've seen so far, whereas you used to have just access to a little bit of cavalry with a lot of these more recent lists. Now, actually, cavalry has to be 75% or more of your whole list, so theoretically you could have a 100% mounted army, which obviously is going to give you a ton of mobility and let you maneuver quite well, hopefully, depending on your orders. But compared to a lot of these more infantry-based lists with just a hint of cavalry and chariots, you should definitely have a movement advantage. And with a lot of the cavalry too, they tend to have higher stats, so a little bit more potential for damage there too. So, and of that, horse archers do have to be 75% of that 75% or more of the cavalry, and then infantry up to a quarter. So they do have access to a little bit of infantry, and we'll get into that. And then we have the usual division and skirmisher breakdowns there. So what do we got? So it's not necessarily a huge list, as we can kind of see if we pull back here. So there's not too many unit options, but you do get some interesting stuff here. So starting off, and again, of your cavalry, 75% of them still have to be horse archers, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're overly weak list or anything like that. So, and just to go here, right, again, so at least 3/4 of the cavalry units in the army must be horse archers. So we'll jump into that in just a second. Heavy cavalry armed with contos and bows up to 3 units. So, so you're definitely going to want to play a large enough game to make sure that you can have up to 3 of those units, and that still fits into the basically 25% of your remaining cavalry that are not horse archers. And so this is really your single best damage dealing unit, shock unit, really. So Clash of 9, obviously fantastic stat for this time period. Sustained of 6, very respectable, and typical bow stat there for a lot of these types of units. So definitely can get some of that work done, and a very, very great save here for morale save of 4+. So and for 35 points a unit, so definitely a little bit pricey compared to a lot of these infantry based units and lists that we've seen, but obviously these guys are going to do some work for you. So again, definitely worth making sure you can have your maximum allotment of those guys, because that is going to be where a lot of your heavy hitting comes from. Now, 75% of your cavalry has to be horse archers, which is the next unit. So, and as small units, so you're going to have a ton of these. So, a little bit of clash value there again. Having these guys get into combat, things are probably going wrong, and obviously if they get stuck in, sustained of 2 is no bueno for you. So, considering their small unit, though, you still have the short and long range of 2, very respectable. And again, the sheer quantity of this type of unit that you're going to have anyway. The fact that they're small units isn't going to be as bad, because you're going to be throwing multiple units, multiple shots. So the weight of firepower basically should equal itself out. T-shirt save, and then the Parthian shot rule, which obviously juices those guys up a little bit. 19 points per unit there. And so again, that is going to be the bulk of your cavalry. And then again, as we stated at the beginning, you want to max out on that heavy cavalry. You do have access to some light cavalry too, which is kind of like a little bit of an in-between here. So armed with spears, javelins, and bows as small units. So basically a little bit of an uptick there in combat potential. Still not great, but should be okay against similar small and skirmisher type units. Same bow ranged ability there, and these guys do get the feigned flight rule, so they can bounce out of combat basically, all for 2 extra points. So so again, might be worth adding some of these guys as well, but again, you're gonna have to play a big enough game to have 75% still has to be those horse archers. That remaining 25% of your cavalry allotment still has to fit into between the heavy cavalry up above and then the light cavalry below. So that being said, that could be your entire army, those 3 units there. Moving on, though, we do have access to some infantry. If you wanted up to a quarter of your whole army, could be infantry. So what do these guys get? So they have subject or tribal medium infantry with javelins and spears or spears. So again, that respectable medium infantry stat line there, 6 and 6, with a little bit of short range ability, thanks to the javelins, 5-up save, and they are levies though, but they're only 20 points a unit. So again, not rock solid by any means. Again, cavalry is going to be your bread and butter, but these guys, they're not going to be great, but they can hold their own for a little bit. But again, you're going to have to make your cavalry work for you. So don't expect more out of a levy unit here than what they really can handle. Light infantry archers next. Again, not great in combat, but a fantastic bow stat there. Best one that you really get. For the long range, no save, but 20 points for the unit there. And again, that's a normal size unit, unlike a lot of the lists that we've seen where these types of guys basically are relegated to small units. So this can actually be a normal size unit. And then you can take a reduction in points basically to actually make them small units, though. So it's a pretty good discount, -6. Still a little bit pricey, it seems, compared to some of the other lists that have this type of infantry. So, and again, that's, I think, probably all due just to, again, everything's really focused around the cavalry. Then you can get some light infantry with javelins or spears, and then you can also make a reduction or have a reduction in points to have them as small units, but an okay stat, again, typical light infantry stat, 5 and 5. So again, obviously don't pit them against things that they're not going to be good at or good against, but against similar type of light infantry or skirmisher type units, they can definitely be okay there. But as you notice, lots of zeros here in the morale save column for the rest of the list. So casualties are going to pile up pretty quick, and from there on, they're probably going to fold. So don't expect too much out of them as far as like winning wars of attrition against actual like medium and heavy infantry and stuff like that. And again, you can pay to reduce them to small unit and corresponding point cost. So we start off with 19, then we drop to 14. And then we get to the skirmishers, so they do have access to that as well. Both of these are by default small units, one with javelins, one with bows. As we can see, as usual, the bow option drops your clash value a little bit more still, but you do get that 2 on the long range, and here we're going 11 and 12 points respectively. So you got a couple of choices to really think about. Again, you could, if you want to live that dream and do 100% cavalry, absolutely possible. You're going to basically be in those top 3 units that we looked at. Theoretically, I guess you could have a 100% horse archer army, tons of small units. Not sure how effective that would be. Could be pretty annoying to have to deal with if it's an opponent. Just if you can learn how to kite people around and make them get out of position and stuff like that, that could be annoying to play against. But you do have that heavy cavalry option there, so that's really, I think, is definitely something to consider. So hitting that 9 on the clash is, considering the rest of your list, isn't really all that scary when it comes to clash value. Something to certainly consider there. Now, again, if you do want to bring in the infantry a little bit, you've got okay medium infantry and some light infantry options. It's just a much reduced selection compared to some of the previous lists that we've been looking at. But they basically can do a little bit of your work for you, but it's really going to all be in the cavalry here. As you can see, also all the special rules, the good special rules, are with your horse archers and light cavalry. Don't expect much on the levy infantry, and everything else again is light skirmisher type infantry. So that being said, you do have, despite the lack of sort of diversity in units here, you do have a lot of ranged options. So that hopefully, if your shots are getting through, that attrition will build up on your enemy units as they reach their stamina values, and then hopefully you can sort of win those fights with ideally charges. Try to get those over with as fast as possible, just because overall you don't really have much in the morale save department. So and of course, before we finish up, leadership of 8. So again, that's standard all the way across the board that we've seen from pretty much every army. So leadership shouldn't be that much of a problem really, as long as you're making smart orders. But definitely a little bit something different than the usual. So again, if you like cavalry, horse archers, all that fun stuff, definitely take a look at the Scythians. So that's been our review for these guys. If you enjoyed the video, hit us up with a like and a subscribe if you haven't already, and then we'll see you in the next one.